So I see.
Yeah, no, you're there. And we've got a public observer.
That same Mr. Public.
Yeah.
I think it's actually Donovan.
That's what my Zoom workplace shows. Only you'll see the little come on for audio. That's it. So I didn't.
Okay, I have 7 o'clock, so let's start.
Alrighty.
All right, well, meeting go off at the order at 7 p.m. Traditional lands acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous people within whose traditional lands who are meeting today. Adoption of the agenda. There was one thing I wanted to add, but Cherry Turner is going to be doing a memorial service here for Sharon, but I don't have the date, unfortunately.
Found it on my email.
Yeah, so that's okay. It's just be aware that that's happening in February. It'll be, yeah. But I just don't have it handy. Receipt of the minutes. So you've all got a copy of the January 13th minutes.
Are we supposed to receive those in an email?
Yeah, they come with your agenda. They're attached to your agenda.
They might have them been.
Really?
Yeah, I usually just get them.
Double check, because it's a long, it should have been from Jenna.
Yeah.
And it should have had you should have had the financial information on it as well. So if you did, I will have to let her know.
Do you get a meeting invite like this, invitation to the meeting, if you wanted to turn it online? Because at the bottom of the meeting invite, it's the relevant documents, meeting minutes, and so on. So it's going to be addenda package.
Yeah, double check. So, all right, and we don't. So we just say the minutes have. So a motion to adopt the agenda. Nils, Susan, second. All in favor? And the minutes, January 13th. So I'll just say they've been received.
Yeah.
We do not have a delegate scheduled for this meeting. But there was somebody who's going to speak at our public time. He is not here at the moment, so I might fit him back into the agenda at a later point here, because I don't want to hold him here for the whole meeting. So let's just go down to old business. Riondel Community Centre renovations update. Not much to update you on, other than the fire thing, and that's below on the agenda. What I'm hearing from all the correspondence I have, I contacted Patrick Chetnika from Columbia Basin Trust to give him our list of priorities. I've sent him some estimates of the work we wanted done here in the building for the accessible washroom and hallways. And the response I get back is that they're now working with the RDCK staff, and we're out of this loop entirely at this point. So I have no idea where any of that is at this moment.
I get one.
Oh,
You got the kid?
okay. Donovan, grab a seat. You can take a comfortable chair if you like.
Take that one. Good much.
So we'll go back. We'll just we'll put 7.1 on hold and go back to public time here. So Donovan, just give us your perspective on the current problem.
Issue that's the ground seepage issue that has come to my attention as of which apparently has been getting worse and worse for over the last 2 years down on Ainsworth Avenue. There's Larry, Stevenson, and Lydia, and now Greg's yard is a swamp. It's moving its way through town, and it's becoming an issue. Something needs to be done. I got brought in to see if I could figure out what to do. I don't want to touch that. because all I'm doing is moving it from one property to another. That's kind of what it's doing as is. So I've teamed up with this engineering firm called Active Burn. We came out and had a little honest submission last May. And they're just looking at the ground the situation. This company, they work all across the province. They specialize in this kind of stuff. The problem is like for now it is leaking out of private properties, so it's technically private owners' issues, right? But here's what this company is we're starting to lean is that the storm drain system in Ainsworth is not meeting any code, any specific code. And it's not a storm drain system, it's more like manholes that go into culverts that are not to a deep enough depth and not capturing the water. Like as for what caused the water to pop up where it has like changed, that's a mystery. That's up to the hydrogeologists who are way smarter than me who can maybe actually figure that out. Bubbling up last week. Corner of that property, right on the verge. Okay, yeah, it's this has just become something that's often been radars and see what I can do. Here I am. It's like I don't really know where to go with this. I guess specifications and like what we need to do is something needs to be done. It is my opinion that this storm drain system is inadequate. It seems like maybe it's also short circuiting down the water main too, coming out of the watershed for these two properties because water it just it's way for the easiest route. That's what's going on. So I don't know if you guys know me too well, but I design and build systems. My standpoint is fine. My consent when they implode there, you now can't do anything. So what this does, this creates a health hazard. So I've talked to the health department, and they are willing to get improvements. And I don't fully know the scope on that. What I know from is if say a private owner is negligent, they will issue them a health report. You have X amount of time to fix it or you're out of the property. They do not screw around. So I'm just kind of what I want to bring up is if it does come down to us proving that the RDCK infrastructure is inadequate or not meeting an actual code that is in place, then it could come down to the health department forcing them. So I want things to not go down that road. Anyways, this is where I'm at so far. We're in preliminary phases. The problem is where's the money coming from now? So people have been doing work pro bono. These people, they're top level hydrogeologists, they're not cheap. And I don't, where's the money gonna come? The town can't put most people down there are not. I mean, it's 15 to 18 grand just for the first phase. And you can start putting real shovels in the dirt and actually start doing some basic all that. So, yeah. What I want to is why I'm here is just to tell you what I've been doing, where we're at. Hopefully, if we can convince the regional district that this is all or whoever, like however we can make this go away. Because right now, people's properties are being compromised, people's health is at risk. And it's just going to get worse. Right now, he's taking the brunt of it. He's in just like the lowest place that there is. And it's bad. His whole place is completely submerged. Greg Davidson.
He's on this road, he's on
Is it Eastman, this one?
Yeah, just past.
Yeah.
First square, takes
the 3 down.
Yeah, he's in a bit of a low-lying area. If you walk through that alley just behind, you'll get a really good look of what's going on. Because like he can't walk in his back. His chicken coop is in water. He's trying to divert it elsewhere. It's only going to move its way down onto the avenue below, like down to Fowler's place if it finds a way through Easton. So something has to get done, in my opinion, or else Greg's going to have to move, and that's going to be a problem. All these people are going to. It's going to eliminate that part of town. Yes. So that's pretty much.
And we're in the middle.
I'm caught in the middle. I'm trying to spearhead this. Like it's breaking my heart. trying to help people. It's my extent. The extent that I can help is starting to come to an end now. There are people with the know-how. There's we're starting to talk about different levels of engineers getting involved to actually fix it. So either it doesn't get fixed, those people have to leave. If it does get fixed, it's going to cost a lot of money. We need to figure out that. So that's what I don't want to see something happen. But there has to be money in it, right? Or else nothing's going to happen.
Right? Was it? It all dug up there last year. What did they actually do?
I
Because
just,
it didn't seem to change anything, so.
Took out the old,
that was different. So apparently this has been started before that happens, but I'm just learning.
Well, I think the history is probably fairly straightforward. That whole hillside up
Yeah.
there, it's a swamp.
Yeah,
It was heavily vegetated. It was soaking in the water. That whole hillside is now stripped. There's nothing on there
yeah.
to absorb water. So if you go from a heavily vegetated hillside, that's a swamp, to
But it's screwed up. It's popped up in the last 2 years, anyways, because the house that Larry lives in is not new. There's the concrete wall that is popping out of. Like you can't just. It's free.
yeah, but that hillside 2 years ago was not. It was not. I think they cleared that hillside maybe 3 years ago.
I just don't know if it affected that much. That's why. I think this is about my pay grade, but I'm in the middle of things, trying to help the folks there. I don't want to say I don't know the history very well. Really believe that just stripping a couple trees on one wall will change it that much, but
It's not just the trees. It was the entire side. It was all skunk cabbage.
yeah,
It was vegetated.
those will definitely absorb a lot.
Well, prior to the water running through Larry's yard, okay, across the street, across Ainsworth from Larry's house.
Yeah.
Okay, there's 3 or 4 lots that are
Yeah.
used as trailer sites. Almost all of those properties have changed the drainage lines off their properties. And that happened before
Yeah, no,
Larry's problem came up.
So, as I said, I've gotten involved in it. totally.
Gary,
But what it is definitely seems very likely is that there's not a storm drain system on Ainsworth. It's gonna happen. You can't stop change. And if that's what's caused the change, then the storm drain system is completely not in code, because from what we can tell, they're just walls full of it. So it's going underneath.
it's time, maybe, I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh, you use the word service.
And I wish I knew this.
I'm gonna get a little bit of God's one.
Have the answer.
So, there, nothing Donovan, you said, the regional district.
Yeah,
Has that turned out of work.
Okay.
And where he said.
Okay.
And second talk was fall, okay? First, there's no requirement for a regional district to manage a storm drainage system. Here,
I just assumed it
there's
was.
no statutory code requirement, anything. Voluntarily, by petition, at the request of residents, issuant to regional district with the right number of people representing the property owners within a defined area, created what's called Service S-165 Drainage Area 8, defined area drainage. It is a voluntary service where residents said, please tax us, but not more than so many dollars per year. It's in the bylaw. And that's a constraint to do improvements to the drainage issues. Number one issue being that the old line on Ainsworth, which had wood catch basin structures and rotted out pipe, it's collapsing to the point of being dangerous, where orange snow fences are on some of them. If a child slipped in there, it'd be life-threatening. Run in.
Trick-or-treating all the time.
So, that is a legacy issue of having a team that was never integrated,
Yeah.
where they built stuff in a highways regularly. No permit, no responsibility in culpability. They were installed by whatever, company town and staff. Mentality as a town. It's not a town incorporated. You're a community.
Can.
So voluntarily, people said, start taking a fixed amount of money, making changes and doing improvements. So there's no code standard regulation on the Government Act or the municipal chart for the regional district to provide.
Okay, so if it was incorporated.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Community charter is much more specific. In a community charter, community, uncredited community, they must manage all the roads that are not under the jurisdiction of highways or the feds, because you can have, something that feds may be involved in. But the municipalities must manage some of the roads and they must manage the drainage.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to look at best practices, not so much codes, but standards. Whatever municipality finds, they consultant at one time or another is given layout of storm drains, the code requirement separation from storm drain, water line, all the spatial stuff for safety and for health and that kind of stuff. Not enough. So this community said, hey, your pockets, today it's $25,000 a year, and do what you can.
Okay.
So with the kilometers of roadways and ditches and drainage issues and well-known long-term, the first conversation that I recall sitting around here was the cheapest, most effective thing is to do what highways do as a minimum, get the water off the traveled surface. So that's why highways is interesting, because some of the buildup is flowing over the road.
Yeah.
And icing, dangerous condition, they're responsible for that. So you need to keep throwing sand and salt and flag it and put hazard signs and stuff to slow people down. Or they got to somehow keep that road to a certain standard. What happens with that water on either side of the road is not the requirement of them converted. So the easiest thing was, it was discussed, and some people in the room may have been in the conversation, well, the cheapest, easiest thing is take out the rotten, reshape the ditches with deeper open ditches to take the water deep and further away to whatever outfalls you have. That would mean probably, one, you're not going to park in front of your house very easily because there's not a lot of road lines there. You'll be on this angle and maybe get stuck. And two, if you need to drive onto your property for vehicle access, you'll need a separate one. You need a permit. I have one second driveway in Boston. You need to have a minimum size culvert now to ensure it stays clear. Yeah, and be with the practice in terms of that, which I've been doing.
And that's very common to have to do the culvert.
People say, oh no, that's not what we want. We want you to fix the old stuff and then make improvements. So the first several years of money was spent on one, looking at the problem and having hydrological engineers looking at the flows, looking at the catchments, the numerous drainages. They used to just naturally shed and have been interrupted. You can see the lows and the highs and the old swales. It's not a creek, but there's a road across. And those road things where you don't want a road to do this. So the ground does this. And the road does a little less undulation, and you end up trapping water like Charles just described. You have there many wetlands that wouldn't have normally developed there. Anthropologic, they were a result of human activity. And at that time, they wouldn't care what the law was because they weren't doing that. They were building roads. Company town lake. So somebody realized having some culverts in some of these places where the roads are not drainage makes sense. So studies to say, well, what have you got? What condition is it in? What are the runoff characteristics today? Because whoever sized whatever button was looking at different data. And what can you afford? So there is a big chunk put in. The biggest gain this community has seen, you say nothing done or not let done, is permit was applied for to create a new waterfall, a Singardi in the creek. Hendricks and to have a new waterfall to the creek to take all the flow from Ainsworth over what's a rock hump. There's a ridge of rock and get it up there. So that was a plus. Now the question was, well, what's going to happen? Is that new pipe and outfall with enough structures to be able to keep it clean? It will absorb some water. There's no bottom in those manhole structures. None of them are catch basins. They don't catch anything at the top.
Okay,
It goes in there.
I used the wrong words.
But I would rather do these catch basins, but if they're catch basins and they're in the roll-ups, it wouldn't be steel culvert pipe.
Yeah,
They would be concrete H20 rated with an
Yeah.
H20 concrete reinforced ring with an H20 manhole and cover,
Marshall,
and they
I
would be 5 times the cost.
think that's kind of like unfortunately what it needs to be. Between the two, manholes is where the water issue is because, yeah. And it definitely seems apparent that preferential flow is just going around it.
So just wait.
So like, there'd be a good, like, yeah.
So I can carry a little more. And the thing's been analyzed and discussed. They aren't manhole structures that you can create as catch basins by cutting them down. That steel grate would collapse and be a hazard. I mean, the school bus parks along the edge of it. Everybody brings their big truck. Not anymore. No, but you're in a highway road lines. You're not going to put something that a vehicle can drive it that wouldn't take the weight of the gravel. Or you put, right?
Well, I had a tricopter involved in that section too.
So you're not in that position because that is far more expensive. What's happening is the rotten, decaying pipe that wasn't allowing any water to go any one particular well has been improved to the point that water that's making its way that far is now going to new outfall. You haven't heard anybody talk about intense rain popping the manhole covers in East right here because some of the pressure through. Now incrementally, what's the next thing to do? Well, the study director said, we'll go a little further south and so we can test some of that. And it's multiple projects over multiple years, right? A very small budget. So I proposed several times because I designed a couple of these. It is possible to take what you have and strip open stretch of 50 to 100 feet here and there, either side of these structures, and create a deep enough French drain, take a 12-foot roll of down 5 feet and back up 4 or 5 feet, throw another 6-inch big hole in a socket, fill it up with Carl Duex 5/8 minus underslot. It will be minimum 30% porosity, and flop the top over and regrade the surface. It's not such a nightmare up and down. And take everywhere that people have unauthorized cedar cut holes in the side of those structures and run their own little drain pipe in there. It goes, the people in any other city, you have to spill your water on the roof, your driveway, onto your grass or onto your own property. And that runoff will become a surface runoff and be misty, well-graded, French or replace those structures with proper H20 concrete.
Yeah, that's the expensive option.
Well, you have enough money to do 1 or 2 a year. Going.
Yeah, no, that's the
10
more.
Yeah. So I think, well, talking to the highways and the issue of their safety and saying, yes, you bring interior health in because you don't want to ignore or turn a blind eye to the health issues. I'm going to turn a blind eye to the impacts of when people, private landowners modify groundwater and surface water. Well, that's an infraction under water and resource stewardship, the water line. That's an infraction. And usually a conservation officer, natural resource officer will come out and adjudicate that, tell people what to do. This ends up with people, my direct experience, trying to advocate what you're trying to do,
Right.
seeing people lawyer up to force each other. So there's a path where people can start getting at each other's circles.
And
There's a path where highways will say, well, maybe we have a few tens of thousands to throw in the short term because they have an escalated needness issue. There's a path where we can see what the regional district can do with that very limited budget the regional district has and see where else we can concentrate on improving something that was not on that bigger work plan, but is obviously escalated. Whether we get deep enough to catch the problem sufficiently, you have to get permission for private landowners, maybe do some walking, see what's changed, that Gerald's talking about. So there's something in this. There's a multi-way conversation underneath. I thought it was, maybe I will go into more. Let's have the Water Services Committee meeting. I was thinking maybe I'll do remote. Maybe I'll go and county staff again and find out, okay, because highways putting money on the table. but it is underway.
There is
But
a
it is
meeting.
not. There's also all kinds of negotiation. But it is not a code, it is not a responsibility, it's a local government thing, and it's at the request of residents to spend a limited amount of money, do a limited amount of work.
Versus they would have to pay more to increase that.
Yes.
Probably.
So we can't legally increase the budget without voters
Yeah, without everybody in town, we're going to
vote,
they're already
tax each other.
I'll just.
So why is this not considered an emergency situation? It is critical. It is
Yeah.
urgent.
I brought that up.
Frank Davidson's garage is collapsing because it's being undermined.
It was, okay,
Uh, Lavia has graciously diverted the water into her own property
Yeah.
to ameliorate a little bit what Greg is dealing with. And now it's going into her front yard. You know, it has no, this is an urgent situation. It's not, let's study this for a long time and figure out a long-term solution. It's no different from a forest fire. Forest fire comes through, burns a part of your town, you get help to get it fixed. This is the same. And I phoned Chris Gainham and I said, this is not a simple situation. It's urgent. It needs to be acted on.
Okay.
And I don't see a reason for that not to happen. And there is emergency money out there, I'm sure, to deal with something.
If I can say something slowly. Two things. One, it is a long-term community-wide issue. The people that have to say, yes, we're going to pay a whole lot more money every year for the, or yes, we see, and I just said, where can we cobble a few tens of thousands from here and here and here to do something now in a few areas. But nobody is mandated to do that. Now, I also had a bit of a conversation with the board chair and CAO about when does something become a local government emergency. Not there. Now, I'll talk to Chris, Alex, Uli, and maybe Stuart tomorrow, and maybe I have to just get your first vote going. I don't think they're going to hear anything different. So your opinion of what generates an emergency situation to declare a state of local emergency does permit access to provincial funding for certain things, not just for whatever. So I can, again, we don't have time. I'm not going to do it in front of this whole commission. Clearly in my mind, the province has popped up with hundreds of thousands of dollars under state of local emergency to deal with something that had an imminent threat to individuals and their property, their residential properties. This hasn't seemed to meet that bargain.
It does.
So, opinion, and say that to whoever else you need to. I've passed that sentiment along. That's where I'm going to stop that
It's
conversation.
already said that they also, and so that kind of like registers to me.
That might change the flavor.
Yeah.
And has explicitly been discussed in the meetings. I've been on.
I'm curious, like, so a friend of mine brought up grant applications, like she do very good at writing grants and deal with this type of stuff. And what can the citizens do maybe?
Okay, what kind of grant are we talking about? I mean, you will not hear Columbia Basin Trust on security. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
Because if it's the perception that this falls under the purview of any government, local, provincial, they are deathly adverse to stepping in because they were threatened in the past with their funds being removed and placed under provincial ministries because there was an accusation they were duplicating provincial efforts. So they will not support anything that any level of government may be responsible. So then people say, oh, I'm good at writing grants, already getting grants. And who recommends the easiest grants to get? RDCK. Me, your area director, I can tap into discretionary and community development grants. And I have already had a conversation around it. And it doesn't matter who writes me an application to recommend a grant. This community has received more grant money mainly through the Community Works Fund, Gas Tax Fund, because of its eligibility, because the amount of assets that are under the auspices of the regional district. Regional district holds this building for the purpose of pulls the water system, pulls the fire system, et cetera, et cetera. So this community's already received a lot of money. Don't imagine there aren't other communities that are envious of that. Here, this community, oh, government's doing this and that to us. But you've been more eligible for grants. So I have had a conversation about where the limited amount of community development grants, which is the taxes for the transfer, cannot be increased. It will just expire, right? I've had that conversation. So if anybody's going to write me a grant application, I'm ahead of them, but I'm not just going to say, oh yeah, take more money for here and ignore the other problems. Oh, and they're very similar, almost exact problem. They had Christmas. I have a groundwater table and neighbors to each other's streets. And I've seen the problems in Twin Bays, northern, further up in Boswell, other locations. This is not me. The other grant is discretionary grant. So here's one. You can say, well, I recommend to the board we increase discretionary grant funding by double or triple. The board might say, okay. So Wendell, Boswell, Certified, Great Creek, Crawford, they are all paying that discretionary grant fund. I say, great, now I have more money to spend in here. Again, it is a balancing thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys asked for the drainage system to be modified with a cap on the spending. So plan of staff, if I went back to S-165, is to have you guys as a community talk about doubling or more your taxation so that you can accelerate the work that's done. And that's more fair because it's not your that they would pay for it if a grant is late in the line. So you got to think about the position of balancing allocation of resources to help everything. Now, if we could get a provincial emergency fund, that's why I brought the topic. That'd be wonderful. You can only get provincial compensation as a private individual if it impacts your residents or your livelihood if your business is run on that property. Potentially qualified.
Yeah, I
But
think
the
does
bar
potentially qualify.
doesn't seem to be met, Chair.
Well, I think it needs to take another look. I think people need to walk there, look at his property.
Anybody who wants to
In
write
a one-week period, Greg's yard has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
That was supposed to.
And I believe
It's Roxy's place. She's getting the swamp.
look at them all. I'll wear them all. I've taken videos, photos. Staff like them out.
and I think Chris said that their staff is coming out
Yeah,
again, so with MOTT looking, which would be the best solution if those two groups work together. But it's not something that you can stand back.
They are working together. They're not standing back. On the state of emergency, those individual landowners who are directly impacted, maybe they should write in too. Whoever.
they have.
They've done that, but this is where local government, needs to step in and help.
I've said what I've done.
Okay,
I've said what I've done, giving you background for that. But you haven't told me anything, you Donovan, but I don't appreciate it because I think that your intervention is helping people maybe recognize the business and not just do this and that.
Yeah. People are starting to see that things are happening anyways, because a lot of people feel really, they've been calling for a long time, for 2 years. I'm the first person to step in, so here I am. And it's great to hear that more is happening. I hope more happens soon. The sake of Greg, because right now he is in the creek running through Larry's.
But he's installed a pump now. And
Yeah, I know. I don't have the parts to tell him it's not really going to change much. Because what he likes to dewater a site like that, you need to drill deep wells. You need to have some high-end well pumps, but then also your those rates septic system too. And I'd be afraid to test that water too. Like what that works box. Because the reason why the septics are working good in that neighborhood right now is because groundwater is taking the sewage away. That's it. Guaranteed. Those things are all submerged, but the preferential flows, which is the
Pollution to pollution is dilution,
yeah.
and my props. Never do your engineering designs based on that presumption.
Yeah.
Because it's decades, including back to when these streets were laid out and these houses went in. That was part of the.
No.
And I recall being told, take that as the.
No, the attenuation is a big deal.
That's not a.
Well, it's a jingle, but Brian, I do like Brian.
Mike,
Just a quick question, Gary, that 25K a year, is that spent every year, like the full amount of that is last?
No, because it was
There,
built up for a few years and then depleted almost. And it's built up for a couple of years again, and now it's depleted back almost.
it's like, it does function as a reserve then,
Oh,
like when it's not spent. it's
there's
carried
no
forward.
use for this. It's against the law to take money from one service.
But it was not really used for a decade. You know, after that initial work on Ainsworth was done, no other work was done on the system.
And
No,
then,
there was some very minor work done on town. And then there was a lot of pressure put on highways to improve some of the culverts where we could see overlaps.
So my understanding anyways, the takeaway is that, that storm system is more MOT responsibility.
No, it's not.
No,
You know,
no agency is responsible for a municipal style smart drainage system in this underground. And this is the only service of this nature in the entirety of the regional district. Only service is this one.
But I think the overriding concern is the welfare of the people on
right now, that like something needs to be done. I don't know what the answer is. I'm learning a lot, Gary. Thank you.
Well, what seems to me to be sort of the core problem is nobody wants to take responsibility.
Everybody's passed it.
Support, right? And Riondel itself, as an unincorporated thing, is not taking responsibility by being unincorporated. Right?
We're not responsible. Daniel, mayor.
Riondel is not responsible. We're just not. And I think in many ways, that's gonna have to change because, you know, a lot of the issues that happen around here is because we're unincorporated. We're asking RDCK to do it or somebody else to do it. And, you know, and to get to that, to get incorporated is a big thing, but I'm thinking that's the way I can see in the long term, us maturing as
That's what my thoughts were.
we will take responsibility and then find people to work with actual group that is has ownership. That means for ownership quality.
That's been considered in the past.
Did you want a little history on the most recent Area A push for incorporation?
Well, I just wanted to tell Jim that this has been fully pursued in the past. And it was rejected.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's no reason it can't be put forward again. It is a challenging proposition. Somebody would have to spearhead that research.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it's possible. Gary, so you have.
So the closest recent push for something like this was Windmill, which has 305 or so individual residences on the water system. So, you know, half again the population has a fire service, regional district fire service, has an irrigation district, which is its own local government for water. So it has some similarities. Problem with Windmill, and twice I've seen it go through the ropes, once because I was Kootenay Lake Chamber president at the time when we did the one review and involved in economic development, and then the other time is in my current role, was that in Windmill they didn't want to densify the community. So what people were told that when you take on new corporate, you take on the maintenance of the roads, the drainage, the water, all these things are linear and spatially dependent. So if it's 5 acre typical lots like much of Windmill, the one house has to pay for a lot of plate, a lot of pavement. And every analysis they did, the province said, well, we will give you an operating grant, like we do the little tiny football stamps, Silverton. So much money, but you get started, and then you're on your own. Raise your taxes and make the money you need. And in Windmill, people said, oh, no, we want nice roads and we need a sewage system because they want to water people on 5 acres. We need a sewage treatment system. You need this, you need that.
Yeah.
But we don't want taxes to go up. And so the obvious answer, both times we went through, was push. Because if you're not going to create a community plan to begin densifying, you'll never be able to afford that. amount of linear infrastructure. This community is different because you're compact. You have way less pavement. Highways love it. If a little place like this is appropriate, because they only have to do the numbered highways, in the main thoroughfares, right? So they wouldn't have to do anything here. They're done. Don't care about drainage, they don't care about how it comes or doesn't come. Yeah. City or town, village problem. But you're compact enough, it would be a different analysis. But it hasn't been looked through the modern lens. How generous is the province? And how willing is the province to create another entity with a mayor and council, minimum 5 councillors, be paid? You must have a corporate officer, you must have a chief financial officer, must have under community charter and local government. So you're going to raise the cost of people sitting here and people who are paid, and you're going to have to carry the burden of your municipal infrastructure, and you're going to have to meet all the current requirements. You talk about grants and stuff. You're not getting any grants, shared cost management. You show both that you understand what you have, you understand what it costs to keep it up, and you're willing to pay. If the people are willing to raise taxes as required to meet standards, so you can take a run and roll the ball, being compacted, a better chance than Windle will ever have.
Well,
Where land?
I have a question about that, because legally Riondel goes all the way to turn off.
No, a defined area service. I don't think it's that. A defined area service for water.
Not traffic water all the way to Jim Donald's house.
No, they're all defined.
Okay.
And you can see how different they are if I go back to PS 22 or whatever.
I just know.
All different taxes.
Legally,
Yeah.
Riondel is right.
Okay, I think that's something, Jim, if you wanted to pursue it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I doubt that people in this town who don't, how many people don't live here? They're the ones
Absentee owners.
that are not a chance. Right? Not a chance. So, I mean, I'm not saying this because I want to see it myself, like push against the wall. But to me, it's the only thing. Who's responsible for anything in life is the deal, right? That's how you go through life. So when you're responsible, okay. We're just not quite able to be responsible.
And that's
Well, we are, and we have been. I mean, the water system is managed. The
Yeah.
building is managed. Things are managed. This is what's happened with the drainage is a bit of an aberration. That's why I call it an emergency situation.
Yeah.
It's not something that you would plan for long term. There is a drainage budget. Work has been done on the drainage system. It's been manageable, I think, until now. And I do want to say one thing that I think is really important, Gary, when you say how much money this community has been given through various agencies. This community pays higher taxes by far than any other community on the East Shore. And I think people need to be credited for that they've been willing to pay those high taxes to maintain the services that they've got. Sometimes that seems to be forgotten. It's as if we're asking for handouts, but we're not contributing anything. We are contributing a lot of money to our local services, and that just needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah. And I acknowledge that, but you get the service. You get the fire service, you get the benefit of your insurance reduction and the comfort of community.
That's right.
You
And
get-
we pay for it.
Yes, and that's fine.
It's not a gift.
But the other sources of money, everybody in Area A pays for, or everybody in the regional district pays for, over and above. So granted, the community has services, and I'm just starting to tally the difference because it's to tell as to how you would define the community of Riondel. You have services that others don't get, okay? And could be enviable to some. Or you have people willingly, or just somehow it happened, but it was always willingly, tax everyone within a certain area to pay for this building. Whereas I put my tool belt on for free to help Boswell. I put my tool belt on to help.
And people put their tool belt on for free
Yeah.
here.
But Boswell
Doing this whole time.
Boswell with zero tax funding still maintains a facility through 100% volunteer. So there's different levels of community input versus forced tax input. And so the people who are absentee landowners are paying for your use and enjoyment of this building in part, even though they're not here to use and enjoy it. So it's just not an apples and apples. There's so many different scenarios. The money you tap for grants, say through Area A, you go to anywhere in Area A, and you're not contributing exceptionally anything more to that. The money that we get through some of the grants is population based, and some of the grant money we get is tax based. This tax, if we take the drainage, street light, refuse transfer, some of these that are the same size of service, we pick a number of 6.2, or whatever that means, and the taxes for services across everything are 126.7. So 6.2 is 4.5%. Your tax base within, say, your water system is 4.5% in the entire regional base of the Area A tax base. So should you get more than 4.5% of what's available in community development grants, or what's available in gas tax grants, or what's available in discretionary grants? Because your tax base to the entirety is only 4.5% of the entirety. But you have got more than that's what I'm saying.
And I'm saying we're paying for what we've got. Anyway, let's move on.
Paying to
Okay, so I mean, we're done with me then, I guess.
I think we're done with you, Donovan. I really appreciate
Yeah.
Donovan.
I learned a lot. Thank you.
I appreciate your support that you're able to give. I'd be interested in knowing if there's anything going on. Just you're saying if someone's going to drill a well. I know in
Well,
Windle,
that's basically nothing's happening too much.
basement sumps and pumps and some surface swales were dug in Windle
Yeah.
between Christmas and the first week in January. And that's because they all have 5 acres, most of them, 2 acres at least. That was enough of a fix for the prices there. Here, because everybody's so tight, instead of being a couple people impacted by X, Y, and Z, it's 8, and then on the, say 16 or
Yeah.
22.
Worried about it just moving through that low end of town and it just becoming like Greg's, I just feel so bad for him.
And it's not just Greg, Levia's
Yeah.
facing the same thing right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I just clarify? I know that one property is the one that's on the corner of Ainsworth where the school bus used to park. But are the rest of the problem properties, those properties that have the trailers on?
No,
No.
And where?
It's a little bit more to the north. It's like, the
Where's it
people in that
coming from?
neighborhood really seem to think it's coming from that area and then short circuiting down the,
What area?
A bit of an older wetland.
where the school bus used to park.
Oh, right there.
It's
Okay,
coming
okay.
from there, and then it's just,
Okay.
for whatever
I
reason,
just didn't know
it's
what it was
that low draw.
emanating from.
That's what they seem to think the epicenter is,
Okay.
and now I call it the disaster zone, is down in Larry's.
Or you could actually see it bubbling up.
Yeah, I don't think that's the source of that.
I don't know, it's.
That's a
that whole
separate
end of
issue.
town, like, you'd have to start putting guys and stuff,
Well,
water to like, watch change colors all across town to figure out where it's all going.
we track somebody ice, because I'm here frequently, that's my grandkids live down the block.
Yeah.
So I was able to capture some pictures that, for staff, that you can see a line of ice partway up along the swale of the side of the, and so that was a good tell, because there's the obvious kind of like little percolating spot. But then where it froze hard a couple of times, just that little snap, and you can see, just the ice in the pavement, you can see how far it went up the side of it and how broad the area of seepage was. So I've got some pretty good photos.
Yeah.
We got to get the staff. I said, not this source, this is this line. It's 150, 200 feet long. And that comes back to we create a service drainage proper catch basin, or we cut into the side of the structures. And we create a French drain with a deep enough swip, not so deep that people get stuck, but deep enough also water on vegetating and down into that and can percolate down into that very place. The further along one is tougher. Your observation of coming out through the the laterals to the curb stops. Yeah, water's found an easier path.
Yeah.
And you cannot stop that unless you get to get under that. That one, that's tough. Well, some of the structures are deep and some are not.
I think the cheapest dirtiest solution would just be, it's going through their properties. You could run like just a little 6-inch pipe, the two of them could pay for that, but then something in that alley needs to be done to get it away from the people down below. That's my opinion for now.
I guess it's my ways to do it.
I don't know.
Big rock.
Well, Larry says he'll pay me for a bit of my time invested so far, so I've been putting a lot of effort in pro bono for the last. I might get paid. Get big bucks. So.
Okay,
Thank you.
Get going.
He says Larry, he makes Roxy's husband.
Roxy, there's things.
All right, back to,
Can I just have one follow-on question? Gary, I'm new here relatively, and and you don't have to do it now. But at some point, can you enlighten me as to Riondel gets a disproportionate amount of grant things?
There's Area A got in the order of 90,000 a year of gas tax fund.
Yeah.
And we were told you better spend it because the feds needed it out and they want this right about what happened with this money.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the
And-
gas.
Had to be spent on this, and nothing else. So initially, a lot of the money that was spent was on local government owned facilities, water systems, or buildings and stuff. So that was the first biggest step, disproportionately funnel, the biggest continuous granting the into a community like this. So we can spend money on the fire hall and window, we can spend the fire hall here, we can spend money on this building and the water system. But we couldn't spend money on Boswell Hall or Great Creek Hall or Window Hall, let alone fire hall, the community hall not. So the eligibility pushed up in one direction. Then they opened it up a little bit, able to spread some money around, and now they've closed it down. So just by lack of eligibility of other entities or facilities, more money leaned into certain communities than others. And that's a fact.
Right. So it just that feels a little disingenuous to say that Riondel gets more than its share.
No, it got more than its percentage.
You got what you were eligible for.
It got
It's not our fault that Wimble and whoever else didn't have eligible projects.
I'm gonna
That's why I'm saying I think we should debate each year.
illogical when someone starts throwing money that favors people.
yeah, this is beyond the scope of this meeting.
And I disagree with them. It's illogical
We need to go out.
barriers to spreading the love.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
Thank
7.1.
you, Mr. Chair.
Renovations. So we're waiting to hear from RDCK staff about where their communications and negotiations with CBT are at. And I have no idea. The basement has been cleaned up pretty much. The fire marshal's inspection has helped us clean up more. And by the end of the month, we should be in pretty good shape, for the overall building. Oh yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
Sorry. So it was my understanding that CBT and the RDCK said yes to the community kitchen. Is that correct?
But again, there's been no sort of official go ahead and do this.
And that's my follow-on question is everybody seems to have said, okay, this is a good idea. But now everybody's waiting for the regional district to say, yes, you can start. And I don't get why they aren't just saying, yes, you can start. If everybody's on board with it, what is the holdup?
That's where that whole issue of communications, I think, is critical.
Right.
And I believe Joe Kiriko, I spoke to him this morning, is going to set up a meeting with him, Tricia, who is taking his place, Craig Stanley, Stuart Gurney, and us. So that we're all sitting around the same table, expressing the same concerns. Because there does seem to be gaps,
Definitely a gap.
you know, between what people want to do and what everybody thinks is okay to do, and that final, yes, go ahead and do it. And I think part of that is a hesitancy on a higher level of giving that responsibility here, rather than being planned sort of from above down. And that's a conversation I think we do need to have, because people here have demonstrated the ability to carry projects forward well. And I think we just need to say there's a lot of expertise here, and we just, within limits, go ahead and do things. But that if Joe can set this conversation up, I think it will help.
Is there a sense of timing?
Well, Joe is going to retire in a couple of weeks, so I would think, I would say sooner rather than later. Yeah. So we'll see. I'll let you know, but I think that might be the most useful way of getting that.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. And then here's here's a perfect example. I have had no communications whatsoever about an administrative assistant position. None. I don't know where the holdup is, what the holdup is, who applied, who they considered, who they didn't consider. No news whatsoever. And it's made it hard now to be fired. Problem, because I don't have anybody in this office. So again, I have no idea what's happening. Emergency generators. This was not one of the proposals that we put to CBT. And I think that, I wish that's probably my fault. I wish I had thought of it. But an emergency generator for this building, I think, would be hugely beneficial. It would turn it into an emergency center, essentially. It would turn in a place that anybody could come if they needed, if the power is out for extended period of time, they need to get warm. The library could operate, and our pipes wouldn't freeze. If there are real cold snap, and we've had real cold snaps, if we lose our power in our furnaces, what do we do? So, and I think maybe there is CBT money that would apply to something like that. But I think it's something we should consider putting forward as a possibility. The cost, probably what, Gary, would be maybe 40,000 maybe?
Well, that was kind of the cost of the water treatment plant, a lot more loading. So if you want to keep the whole building operational, do what Boswell did. They bought a used generator from a logging camp. It runs the whole building. Have to have one transfer switch. Everything's still on. Mm-hmm. If you want to do what some of my clients have done, they say, well, I got a 5 kVA and 25 kVA generator. You say, okay, now we're going to look at a reno where we're going to take put a new panel here, transfer switch, you're going to shed 80% of the load because that's all you can handle. So you want some lights, you want the fridges, freezers.
Yeah, it would be limited.
So they're limited. The cost of wiring and panel and dedicated transfer switch would exceed $40,000 to go together. So it's different to take and shed load and only run part of the build. It's quite a different animal. So I don't have a ballpark figure. Again, in the non-taxpayer, let's just do it thing, there are way cheaper solutions if you can keep it simple. These buildings not simple. So I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, well, I was saying, you just power the 2 main furnaces there. You're not trying to power the entire building. 2 main furnaces, kitchen.
So the trust is looking at funding emergency generators for Great Recall. It's on theirs, I know. And I'm sure others. And the point there is Great Recall is so simple. Keep it simple. Something big enough, power the whole building. one transfer switch. That's it.
Yeah, well, I think we get to the same.
So you've got multiple panels. So you maybe even look within this building, opportunistic it is, one core of the building. You can power one panel, simple transfer switch, and then everything else that you got to think about. Well, now we have to not triage, but you got to go beyond that core, which is heated and some light and serviceability, and say, well, now what do we need? Temporary fans to move air around, keep things from freezing. We've got a plan to drain down. My house has a plan to drain down. I can drain down 50% of my house, isolated for stone cold. I designed it that way because I have a wood stove on one side. It's almost like 2 bucks my house. No, 4 levels. And I have a plan. Oh, if my generator crapped out and power didn't come back on, it's freezing cold, how to survive with my artesian ground water system and gravity sewer system, and half the house frozen solid for a month. And you're like, this building could have the same plan. Now I plumb my own house. It's easy to do. But you got to think of it. Pick a panel and what is the simplest approach, not start trying to rewire.
No, I mean, we've done that at the manor and it works really well. We only powered one room and some outlets in the hallway and some lights.
Simple.
Simple. So we do the same thing here.
So then it could still be a reception or a record place to go in when the rest of the community is closed. So, and that is partly why the trust will support, say, Great Creek Hall, knowing how hard it is to get somewhere else to keep whatever, a few hundred people in a certain area warm enough and housed and maybe run a kettle and keep them with soup or tea or something. So yeah, I think that's worth it. And I think the trust should support that. If it's not the whole building. You're not trying to put during the accident.
Of course, yeah.
Well, they won't do it.
Yeah. So it's something, so I suggest we do pursue that. Maybe look at the trust website and see what, I'm a bit hesitant because we're asking them for a lot of other stuff, but still, what's important is what's important. The town tractor, didn't get very far with that one. Uli, and I think Craig as well, don't think it's a worthwhile investment at this point. But I really I'd like to look more closely at the numbers of what we've spent on that tractor, because I don't think we have those quite yet. So that's just a conversation that needs to be pursued, I think, a little bit. But for the time being, no progress on that. New business. Oh, the big one, fire safety.
We still doing the hourly check.
Wait, Jerry, I'll return.
You're right. Where's the box?
Okay, so we do have the fire marshal's report, which is very short, quite not super detailed, but we know what we have to do, and we're going around doing it. Everything that's on his list is being taken care of in one way or another. But there is, of course, the one glaring exception, which is the fire. That's the big question at this point in time. We are still doing the fire watch. We have to do the fire watch until we have a fire alarm. It's that simple. Or we shut the building down until we get a fire alarm. Now, tomorrow morning, Stuart Durning will be here with an electrician from Mayday Electric, and I believe they're going to be looking at our old fire panel to see maybe if it can be resuscitated. Brandon Turlock looked at it twice and didn't think it could, but it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion. I mean, somebody has an idea that nobody thought. So if everybody keeps their fingers and toes crossed for the next 12 hours or so, the electrician walks in here and says, "Oh yeah, I've seen that before. I've done that before. No problem. and then we can all be really, really happy. Or he'll simply confirm what Brandon has said and says, no, you can't resuscitate it. Now, I thought, and I think Stuart thought as well, perhaps that we could get a temporary alarm system put into the building. But I phoned a couple of alarm companies, one in Kelowna, one on the coast, and they didn't think so. Yeah, either they thought that putting in a temporary system would cost more than putting in a real system, or that it's just not something that they seem to think was really done anywhere. So I don't know. There is a Kelowna Fire Company did volunteer to do a bit of checking into this for us. So I'm hoping to hear back from them in the next couple of days. We sent them photos of our panel here, so they know what we have. They'll look at that and then they'll just check. But I'm not super optimistic that that's an option at this point. So that gets us to, we need to get a new alarm system. But I'm not sure how long that takes. I mean, that's what we were asking for initially here. When I said that, the alarm here doesn't work, we need an alarm system, we're willing to pay for it. But I was thinking we had like a year to plan this. Whereas the fire marshal says you have 15 days. And the 15 days are pretty much up.
Yeah.
Right now. But he also wants to see that something is being done. So if he sees that RDCK staff are working on it, then he'll probably be happy for the time being.
It's this fire marshal is an RDCK staff, and it's not just the communication guy.
Yeah. So,
I just ask so where is it, like, are there blueprints of this building?
no.
Okay, and so without the blueprints, nobody can even make an estimate of how much a new fire alarm system.
Oh, they could quite easily.
There is,
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon had a sketch of a whole system from like 5 years ago.
Sorry, fire and safe. Yeah, no, it's quite doable.
And how much is the estimate for the?
Well, the architect's estimate was $135,000.
Okay, and it's all running EMP and okay.
But I think that's high. I
think it's high too, because we used to do them. I worked in the city
But anyway,
a long time ago.
it is a big number. It's not a small number.
But when you're in the bush too, when do you get people to do it?
So, and when you ask about drawings of the building, there's no merged set of drawings, except I did draw the footprint of this building with every designation and Stuart fixed. And just like I drew the question, it's easy to do with a deep brand if you know what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So they have enough to get it on room by room. And so a little better drawing that's gonna be useful. So I think they have enough to work from to identify, because we 50 points you want.
Yeah.
Because it's possible.
No, I just things are expensive. I mean, we couldn't even get somebody to come and replace a door. And so to actually do a fire alarm system, just to get people to come out and actually do it.
It's a big, because it's a big contract, Susan. I think we could get.
Yeah.
There'd probably be bids. It's 10 years. Yeah.
Now, has the architect inspected now?
No, the architect I talked to, and he is aware of the issue, and he could do the necessary drawings for a tender.
Yeah.
As part of the process. He has to be part of the process, designing a system.
Could we say do it?
Yeah, no, this is where it's now out of our hands, I think. This is where Stuart Durning, Craig Stanley, they need to figure out how this is going to happen. If we can't get our old system working here. Because it will have, unless I'm wrong, Gary, it probably still has to be tender.
Right. So that size?
Yeah. Yeah.
So mine agreed to in general with the other agencies who will add it does. give opportunity.
So the only thing we could do at this point in time is what we're doing, going through all the other things the fire marshal asked us to fix them, show our good faith, and hope, and see how long we can manage with the fire watch thing. But it really is draining. It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If you know, they say, well, we can do this in 6 months, then I don't think so. Yeah. But the only alternative is to close the building.
It's unfortunate that we could,
Limiting the service.
Or, I guess, yeah, limiting the time we operate. Yeah, that's true. We could do that.
it's unfortunate we couldn't continued on considering how long it hasn't been working. And, you know, if the inspection was on Thursday, it's the same on Friday.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, if we're, I don't know, maybe if you, I don't know if he would reconsider if we're showing good faith, planning for a new system and he's confident that everything is
Liability.
Yeah, it's liability.
Well, that meeting last week, I love that meeting because everybody seemed to be in on it, right? It's like, Stuart, man, someone was asked, Marcus, is this going to be a thing in this district, this building, that is going to go forward? And he said, yes. And so we went around with them and they were smart. Everybody was a lot of smart heads. Everybody was coming up with ideas that could be done. I thought it was great, right? And so, I mean, there was an impetus to do it because of the fire marshal. And that's all we need.
Yeah.
Is an impetus, right? And hopefully, I mean, I was also just casually thinking, well, if we hire somebody to do the fire going around.
Well, I think it's improving. First of all, I want to say the volunteers have been great. You know, that's really been super. But Jen, our custodian here, has been given more time. They've told her, you know, she can fill in gaps, so that's good. Keith has been doing the afternoons pretty much, you know, filling in. That's where had we had an admin assistant here, he or she could have also been part of this thing, right? But you know, for the time being, we're managing, but it is difficult.
Odious.
But yeah, I mean, it's. I think you know we're managing as well as we can manage given the circumstances. Yeah. But I don't, and I hopefully maybe Stuart will have some more information tomorrow morning on about where they're at. Well, he'll know for sure about this panel. But beyond that,
So this could take a while.
it could, yeah. There's that potential. That's where the temporary system would have been great. You could buy time. Unless somebody comes up with one. Like,
And did this happen because we decided to get a new fire alarm system?
I think so. I think that's what triggered it.
Because before that, nothing was.
I thought what triggered it was some kind of meeting about the this is what I heard from my son who's in the fire department. Said that it was triggered by the idea of the commercial kitchen.
No.
No?
No. I've been advocating, and this commission has been advocating for a fire alarm for a couple of years now. And it finally registered that there wasn't a fire alarm. And then they sent in the fire marshal. And the fire marshal, and it's the first time he's been in this building. I've been here 11 years. Looked around and, you know, so you can fix that, you can fix that. Oh, you don't have a fire alarm, shut the building down.
So is there any possibility of dipping into our funds to move forward with the idea that it's going to happen?
Oh yeah, no, we have a $409,000 reserve. So
Well then, why Why not get the architect out and have him do the.
Well, this is where, it's beyond our pay grade for this level of stuff,
They need a scope of work, right?
you know.
The architect needs a scope, of work, which is
A direct,
types of rooms, occupancy, something to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then they'll price it out what they want for the services. You could also just wait and say, we're gonna go sole source, which are already written. I had asthma and consulting contracts for every discipline you can imagine when I worked in the program. And some of them through for discipline. On an architect, they say, we're gonna do something, you wanna do this. Who can you put on with expertise in this and this whatsoever? They said, I'm gonna authorize you this week. It's started. But I could sign a $3 million contract. I could sign a $200,000 change order, sign a $10,000 sole source work order, and I was supposed to get 3 quotes if I went through. But there needs to be a bit of understanding. Is the fix a big thing or a really simple thing? Is it a? But I think that's coming really soon, given architect direction. Here are the things we need you to look at. And then given our financial signing authorities, Stuart can sole source 75%. Not Stu Darren, it's Stu Park and sole source 75%. If it's an emergent issue.
Yeah.
This isn't emergent, but it's urgent for community well-being. Right? So,
And this is one of the things where there's actually money.
so there's certainly in pretty
yeah,
what's that architect capacity, how much money?
yeah.
Start. And then to contract the actual work. Well, that's a bigger thing. Yeah. Interprovincial agreements, all this stuff, so you can attend this. Because somebody from Lethbridge might be a bit of slightly better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just with all these things, any nudge to move them.
Well, this is more than a nudge.
Well, it's necessary,
Yeah.
and, I enjoyed that meeting the other day. I thought it was great, lots of information, lots of ideas, what we do. But I guess it's about those goals that hold up.
But
And
yeah,
the decision is,
we'll just do our bit, which is quite a bit, actually. All right, draft financial plan. I'm just gonna take a quick break here before I have it up.
Stand up and switch.
Hope the water. Actually, they should be doing, somebody should be doing a farm.
yeah, wasn't that cool, guys?
I don't know what that entails. I wish I did. Does it?
I can show you.
Who?
We.
You've already done.
You went to this school, so you're like already.
Let's see, this classroom was grade 3. Grade 3 classroom.
You're in.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep you.
Were you in this classroom twice?
I was in this classroom. No.
Did you pass?
Oh, yeah.
That's
6th
4
grade.
years a month.
Yeah.
No.
I would have to check all
Basically, every hour, we go through every room.
Is there a fire in here? Does it smell like there's smoke?
Basically, and then we sign off on the log.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So I think the door back there for operation too.
We're making sure that during the day, the appropriate doors are unlocked. Like,
Your next time live, nothing's going down.
Is there a key for the basement?
basement shouldn't be a key.
I'll go do the basement.
You're gonna go down the secret stairwell?
That's the last at the bottom of the stairs, there's no way.
Yeah. He's gonna have to find the lights in the basement too.
He's done.
He's easy. All right.
Probably pool players. We'll do that.
That was really quick.
Yeah. Good at it, eh?
Yeah, you'll do the walk. All right,
Let's not forget the keys.
Slow.
Dan's gonna enjoy it. That's.
you just went by?
Yeah.
It's all flat plans. Look at the first door and find out.
Well, actually, he doesn't need the keys until he gets to the library, I guess. All right, there is a draft financial plan. that was attached to your agenda minutes. It was at the bottom. It wasn't?
Didn't see them.
Rosa.
Maybe that
Really?
I saw the minutes or the agenda, but
And I got a resource recovery operational hours review.
Well, did you not get Jenna's email from a few days ago that had the open meeting agenda?
I got an email from,
I sent information on the proposed service level change for recycling, which
Right.
isn't on the main
it's
agenda.
not on the agenda.
That's got you guys on 9 anyways.
The one you forwarded, Gerald, has just the agenda.
Want me to print a page? Yeah. Yes.
No, I'll put it on the screen.
Or just put it next to an item.
Should be at the bottom of that.
No, I just had, it just goes to minutes
Really?
from the previous.
So I wondered if she,
Oh, we can't even pin this on Alana.
yeah. I wonder if Jenna just sent it to me. I don't see that she usually sent.
Did receive it as well on Monday. I thought it when I was gonna check and see if it went to Commissioner Stevely because I'm not sure if the main
I was late to the podium.
group has been.
I can certainly forward it again. I just assumed everybody had it. Weird. That's very strange. So I'm just gonna make some quick comments, and then when you've had a chance to look at it, we can pursue it further. What's not included in the draft financial plan are any of the capital expenses that we asked for. We asked that they include the money to pay for the re-siding of the auditorium, to pay for refinishing the entrance ceiling, accessible washroom. We asked that that be part of the capital plan for 2026. It's not here. And the only thing that is here for capital planning is work on the playground, which is great, but it's not one of the things we asked for. It's something that CBT has contributed money for, and and that's wonderful. I have no complaints about the fact that they're putting money into the playground, and it'll make it safer as well. But I'm not sure what to do with the fact that our request for capital funding for this coming year is not included.
So it's a draft.
It is a draft.
It's in progress. And this may be a snapshot from January, that needs obviously more line items put in, because the other request was that the line items be a little more clearly separated, so that there can be a conversational, what's just a little local, $2,000 internet thing. It's there specifically authorized for the board. It's line item, $1,500 versus what is something that's going to be tendered by others. So being a draft, maybe that's why that hasn't shaken out. But I do have it attached on my agenda back in Gmail that closes, so you can see the date.
Yeah.
It is in the middle of this package. But I didn't download this initially, so that Jenna's email of Monday yesterday, her updated addenda, it's called the addenda package, not the regional agenda package. The addenda package has it.
Okay,
So when I think nothing wrong with capturing again and making sure that those are broken out.
and I'll try to send that out again just to make sure you have it. But that's, I think, the main thing to focus on, because we did want that money available for 2026 so we can deal with these items. And it's not huge amounts of money, relatively small amounts on the whole. Other than that, there was one other thing that was odd in here, Gary. Well, they broke it down. There's into like the medical building, they've got a separate sort of spreadsheet for it. So it's a little different approach, and I'm not entirely sure on how some of it works. Like there's a page for Riondel Community Facilities, which has salaries and overtime, but it doesn't match what we normally have for this building for salaries and overtime. So I'm not sure, like it's much smaller. So I'm not sure what they're doing here. It sounds like they're breaking things up more. Like medical center, maybe this office, I just don't know. So when you can look it over and it's
Medical center is the circle, right?
the circle of friends, which makes sense to me, but the fact that they've got $11,000 in salaries for Riondel Community Facilities overhead, I'm not sure what that means, because our salaries are 48,000. Yeah, so that'll need some explaining. Yeah, to figure that out. All right.
So sorry, Gerald, are we going to discuss that resource recovery thing?
Yeah, I think Gary is going to bring that up. Sorry, that should have actually been on the agenda. Yeah, I thought it was. I guess maybe that's something that I missed.
Covered here.
Yeah,
In your
we'll still do. Okay, and can I get back to the agenda here now? Yeah. Oh, maybe I can't. All right. Oops. Oh, well, we're almost at the end anyway, so, okay, there it is. Yeah, so that will pursue the financial, draft, some more. You can send me comments, to look it over. Gary.
Sure. So, at what we call the joint resource recovery meeting, which is, where we review, residual waste management, stuff that goes to land. We look at diversion, what can we get into recycling, and what can we divert in terms of organics. And now we have 2 big composting sites that are processing some of that and have sort of spin up. It's point of diverting is one landfill fill up, and then you are looking for a new place for landfill pretty tough. And the scenarios we look at are maybe trucking someone else that still has space, like moving mountain, sticking the garbage on the ferry from here, taking it to Casca. So it's been a high priority because the Crescent landfill site is limited, and it's also operating under a unusual operating certificate where it's called self-attenuating. So it doesn't have leachate liners, doesn't have a leachate treatment system, reinjection and monitoring and ongoing maintenance costs. It's worth an operating a lot of treatment plant to operate a sewage leachate treatment plant. To avoid that, we have to stay under a certain volume of total waste, which means we want to divert. But we have to make sure we're not making the existing contaminated groundwater, which is being monitored at more than 20 sites. And the hill above the landfill body, down at 721, it's flats into the river. So there's a lot of pieces in play. Now that burden of taxation for that landfill, for waste collection, transfer, recycling, all that thing is figured on a shared service. So there is A, B, C in the town of Creston, all paid within $5 grand. Recycling, you could say NDC recycling is free, and agency used to pay that. Stop saying that because we told them line. So, recycling in this subregion cost projected this year $590,000. So that's from here to Yak and through the town of Creston, almost $600,000 a year. We get by this system about $30,000 a year for the value of all we left. So right now, copper and brass is worth money. Its system pays us money plastics, cardboard, depending what they look like and stuff. Some pays, doesn't pay. Because there's an eco fee placed on everything you buy that is new recycle round. We get part of the eco fee. So what we get pays for about a third of the rent cost. So in BC, recycling has never been free. They stopped saying it. So we got to come up with almost $400,000 for the rest of the cost every year. And that $400,000 comes out of this other service, this resource recovery service. Because if we can't get stuff out of the landfill, costs on that service will escalate faster than the cost of dealing with the recycling. By all projections, every study you've done, whether we truck this stuff, whether we do stuff, try to liquefy it and create diesel and burnable combustible products, all these technologies which are big scale, big money. So all of these are scrutinized. Every service point, whether it's a garbage or recycling collection point, every point costs money. Every point is scrutinized. People tell me, and here, most I've seen here is about 50 people on a budget review. I like to see 50 people here. That's how we've been able to get a budget conversation here. And in Creston, we've gotten 250 to 300 the last few years. There's always the same message. Well, what have you done to reduce the cost? To become a little more efficient. We're not just spend money because you have the money out of our pocket. What are you doing to keep the money in our pockets? So we do things like efficiency studies, even though government's accused of never paying attention to the efficiency. 2023 through 2024, some of the closer looks that were taken were, what are the numbers of points where we pick up garbage, pick up recycling, pays for it? Now, I did go through a little bit of a quick calculation that this community is not half of the tax base for even area A. So it's a smaller percentage of the combination of areas A, B, C, and counties. Like it might be less than 1% of the tax base. It's not the center of the world, that's what I have to say. We've been able, in area A, to maintain waste and recycling services at here, Crawford Bay, and Boswell. Boswell is under scrutiny and committee, which becomes the same people sitting aboard the next day, cutting the hours of Boswell. And I can't argue that that's not reasonable, because the utilization over the 2 days a week is pretty sparse. So it will become in April, based on board resolution, 1 day a week. Some of those hours are going to move to Crawford Bay, because Crawford Bay is busier for a few reasons. And even Crawford Bay recycling is what we call a core depot. Core depot will accept more materials, and we get paid more money. But just a couple $100,000 we get paid back. We make more money at core depots because Recycle BC, Multi-Material BC, has to pay the hauling from wherever we designate as a core depot back to wherever the stuff is. So I argued, well, let's not make the core depots all, say, downtown Creston, the car wash site, and the Creston landfill, which is up in B, because they're both handy to people, and they're shorter haul to Cranbrook Trail, which is where Multi-Material BC has to take this stuff. So we'd have to pay the hauling from here and Boswell to get to town, and then some station there. So I said, let's make it properly important. And my peers agreed. So we only have 2 car depots in East Suffrage here for recycling and the car wash. So people will come to this end, to Crawford Bay.
That's area A, sorry.
Within area A. Within all of A, B, C, and the town, the only 2 core recycling depots are Crawford Bay and at Car. All the other depots are in Bell7. Multi-Material BC requires full-time staffing or monitoring when a recycle bin is open, because it can have litigation. And we thought sort of the common sense thing is, well, people get benefits and not cause this problem. With blue box, which we're not eligible for, whoever's doing the blue box tipping looks in the box. If something doesn't belong, pick the box back to the grass. Leave it. And maybe throw a note in that says reject. Then that person knows. But here we get peanut butter jar that's crusty in the bottom half inch of dried up peanut butter. Goes to the bin, gets to the tipping floor, they got people scanning, so bin whatever gets tipped, contaminate rejects. We get fined for having a rejected code. And then we are paid a fee on the top of the fine to haul that to a landfill, a tipping fee for a landfill. So it's pretty expensive to have rejects. So we said, fine, stop this. So here, you have an incremental staff cost to look at the lowest volume collection recyclables in the district is here.
And that's volume by weight.
Well, the lowest by weight, by piece, by hour usage. It's, and I know, Gerald, I had a bit of a side conversation. This is a pretty sparsely used site compared to what we see in other sites. So the efficiency review said, well, one, the marina on the west arm, and shoot, I'm yapping. What was the other one? It was not South Spokane. It was one in the Spokane Valley, and this one should be discontinued a couple of years ago. This was not. I said, well, this is linked to the refuse service, which is an add-on. We do pay premium, a little extra, to be able to have the garbage transferred from here to basically to Bay. Then everybody else pays that garbage from Crawford Bay to the landfill. The landfill operator, pay all the monetary costs, the long-term closure reserve, everything associated with running landfill. And running the landfill in the whole waste system is about $1.68 million a year. And out of that 1.68 million, about 600,000 is a burden on the recycling side to maintain landfill at roughly operating costs. So, years ago, I said, well, we have to close all of these. We get a pretty good tax base up here, not for communities so much, but Boswell tax base per capita is pretty high because there's lakefront, because lakefront. So I argued the things. Yeah, we got good tax base. People make garbage, not acreages. So give us a break. That's maintained a certain level of service. So this review came up again. Staff said, well, you told us to spend less money. There's a way to do it. So there's 7 recommendations in this particular report. One is to cut some Boswell hours back, and to shift some of them to Crawford Bay and reduce the total burden. The next one was to close the recycling here. And that commission, the Joint Resource Recovery, didn't consider your refuse service because it's isolated. So I said, well, okay, I know we've talked about this before, but if we lose the recycle collection here, which I think is it $16,000 or $13,000 a year that costs?
18,000.
17, yeah. Out of the, now our staff costs are in the order of total for the recycling side of the 600,000, almost half of it's staff. But 120,000 of this hauling costs contract. And you may not think it, but when you have that many little sites with bins and sheds and this and that, there's a lot of infrastructure. I lost that. It's not a 50-year building. It's
Sign the sheet. Thanks, Ken.
it's being really worked on. So this site has been recommended for closure real soon.
Just put a big hat.
Refer it for a month. So it'll come back to joint resource in a week and a half, 2 weeks. And so I can have this conversation here, 3 reasons. I can try and say this site is vital again. I have to say what's in my heart and what's balanced. Notwithstanding, I'm sitting in your community. It is a bonus, regardless of any thoughts in your head first. From my position, elected to represent big picture, whole regional district and all of Area A, it's hard to argue that the walkable community, not putting garbage in the not putting recyclables in the garbage, not dumping garbage in the bush, not this, not that, not burning. I know all those things. I'm not ignorant in terms of the implications of a service reduction, but I'm asked every year, how and when are you going to save some money for the taxpayer at large? And this is fairly obvious. The trouble is then it shifts all the burden of staff, the refuse collection, opening the bins on the S1, what is it?
S209.
No, not 209, 189, S189, which is running between 13 to 16,000 a year for staff and other costs. It's the garbage side. And on that, that's escalated from 8,000 due to hauling costs. When we collect recyclables here, the taxpayer writ large, not you guys, all of them, all the way to Yap, to the home. When you guys decide you're going to go to Crawford Bay for any reason, you go the extra few kilometers and drop the recycling there, Recycle BC pays that. So it is one of the small increments of saving money. Now I sat in a senator committee where I had an idea where we could save $10,000 to $15,000 from the tax roll of the year. And someone sitting at the table, not a rural director, said, well, that's a little, why even bother? So I stared at the person for a second or two and I said, because that's the job. $10,000 or $15,000 20 times matters. And this is one of those 20 times.
But
So
there's,
just
but there's also, you know, the RDCK's goal is to make sure that as little as possible goes into the waste bin and as much as possible goes into recycling.
absolutely.
That you're not increasing the footprint and wasting gas and polluting the atmosphere. And closing this bin, this recycling here works contrary to both of those goals because it will automatically guarantee more stuff into the garbage and it will force everybody here to drive back and forth to Crawford Bay on a fairly regular basis to do their recycling.
So I could make that argument every 15 or 20 kilometers from the entire shore.
Yeah.
So we need,
But we have the infrastructure here. We have, you know, the system in place.
which is
So-
incrementally the most expensive, and that's why it's targeted. So where's the reasonable level of service? These achieving this and this greenhouse gas, optimal community, it's not at any cost.
No,
Because
but,
if it was not at any cost,
but maybe 17,000 is a reasonable to achieve that. I don't know. I'm just saying that.
But you are not collecting all the recycling here from this, and you are not needing to necessarily do a dedicated trip from here to the property transfer station for recycling. If you have anything else to do.
Well, yeah, I have 4 boxes of recycling.
So,
Hey, Mike, sorry.
I just have, a couple of thoughts and questions and all that kind of stuff. So is that sort of 18,000 for this?
one second.
Is that way too?
That is-
That's total.
Because you got very minimal hours average.
For sure, and that's one of the things that I thought was unfortunate in the study as they were presented is giving mention amounts.
Yeah.
But is that from 3 people using it? Are there 300 people using it like that? I thought it was unfortunate that there wasn't a count of the number of people that use it. I realized the cost is based on the wage and everything. Further to Gerald's thought about how many people would be driving across the bay. If 2 times a week we get 14 people using it total, well, it doesn't sound like a big deal. If we get 300 people a week using it, then that is a big deal.
So what level of effort do we put into these key performance indicators?
You got somebody there already.
So,
Click, 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 click. I mean, that's
that's a point. Number of visits, but,
all year round, including summer, because that would almost double.
and then it probably goes.
but that's the same in Boston. So we need one.
Oh, I'm not-
15 kilometers north of my house. Yeah. 18 kilometers up my house because the one's within 2 kilometers. And we need another one just south of, Phoenix. And we need another one at Sir. We need another one where there's no houses halfway from Sir to,
Just to,
so where do we end this?
just to continue with my Sharon. So
Absolutely.
just to that specific point, this is already here. We're not establishing a new one, so that is a little bit different than those other communities. So I just,
No, it's backwards.
I just,
We dropped several sites. We had a site at Park-based Park. We had a site, Lakeview Start, Lakeview, and Windle Market. We dropped those for cost savings.
to get to be the
Established sites. So, yeah, so established sites were dropped. Fair stuff. And
So if we had the number of people, then we could, and I said 100 people use it. It's 36 kilometers to Bay round trip. 10 liters per 100, $1.50 a liter. It's going to cost me $6 that trip, discounting my time. If I go every week here, I assume I'll go every week there. So that's 50 trips a year. So that's going to cost me $300 a year.
If it's a dedicated trip.
Just, we can play that.
Well, I went to Creston today for a 6-hour meeting.
No, I'm not.
And I took my plastic film because I can't dump it in.
I guess.
So the hypothetical won't wash, I guess is what I'm saying, like through the chair. It won't wash because there's too many ways people adjust their patterns to adapt and integrate what they do and where they go.
So there's a lot of hypotheticals in that study as well.
Oh yeah.
So it's either okay to talk about it or it's not.
Yeah. So
can we just use these numbers? Just because I'm getting to the
and
point.
it's $300 per year.
Say it's going to cost me $300 a year to take my recycling to proper bay. That's fine. I know there's a cost to recycling. I know it's not free. So thinking about that, is there an opportunity then to add a charge to the community so that we're paying for the convenience of not having to drive to proper bay? We can just go down into the little more.
So this is partly why I'm sitting here.
So
Because you have a dedicated service, we already paid the $13,000 to $16,000
Right.
premium. And that is what you need to look at.
and that's where I'm saying we may have an opportunity for more cost recovery than what we're doing now. And further to that, we have, and this primarily is in the summertime, a number of lots that have 4 or 5 trailers on them. And I know they're only getting taxed at one. Potentially 4 people here, they're using 4 times as much. They're getting a quarter of what. So that's another opportunity to me. So if perhaps we added soft plastics here, which we don't take now, that would be more diversion potential, more stuff that could go to Crawford Bay, to the central thing. And if we were to take, and so I don't know if there's a cost with this or not, but if we were to take that position and incorporate it with, say, the admin assistant position, which I realize feels like an odd mix. Now this position becomes meaningful because I suspect part of the reason we can't fill this is because who wants to work 6 hours a week? So, and I'm just putting this out as possibilities as opposed to the choice is keep it open.
So those discussions is why I refer this. The across the board, year to year payment decision on my decision. But I can honestly say this is unique. And if I'm to look at every constituents across the whole board, I can say this is one of the opportunities to be the taxpayer people who don't benefit with this unique special deal. Because other community members have lost that unique opportunity. The logistics of say Great Creek Store, and that's probably the best conversation was you have to isolate and pin a place, put certain sizes of bins occupied at the time Tom's parking lot more than you wanted it to have impacted. Instead of having people come when they were customers, they'd have to come within a certain time when you were open. And that would give a surge of business to Tom, which he said, well, that doesn't make sense. People come to Great Creek Store when they need something, not when the recycle's open. The logistic at every one of those private stores, the easiest would have been Crawford Bay, but we thought this decision is common. Doesn't work. So there were a number of reasons services were cooking and things on the way. The only reason on here service was the land ownership was not very, and there's no surge in any private landowner business. So this is unique. Everyone else is just, well, we're going to reduce these services. So this one survived for unique conditions. Now, to make the argument or the case, you can't just, well, 2 or 3 things. First, on staff. We have staffing issues from time to time. I mean, it's interesting how concerned people get when they see something's not open and they drove all the way to do their guys, even if they're going to do something like electronics. So we changed our approach to staffing. Who's on backup or reserve to quickly maybe open an hour late or something like that, but maybe hours as best we can. And some of that information is in the other, they're included in that same meeting. We talked about system efficiency, level of service. So right now, our staff reflect the waste refuse through the resource recovery services. That's 186, 187, 188 are union center. And they have their rights and their how they operate is in that room. Interestingly, the people who are currently stuck in recycling are not. They're the employee agreement, their own representation. It's not a normal sort of union. They're under a different arrangement, as in most of our admin staff. Now, our staff have recommended that we should be merging some of our staff into the same, say, union model. That's stuff being exempt because that gives us better depth and value. So it's difficult to say we're going to further cross-pollinate people from different staffing areas to do multiple jobs. Plus there's training, personal protection.
I get all that.
So we found that there's easy compatibility. We say, okay, you are hired to do this job and this job. And you may get different pay scales depending where you're at. But your PPE and other stuff, your basic training, your awareness, work alone procedures, all those things in an open environment with risk. And we have real risk with people who, especially the ones who handle versus people in office. So there are some difficulties there. Not stuff we haven't thought about. But to shift tax burden to another service, which is already escalated. That's why I open this to the right, make sure you get the right page. The same thing as grant refuse F189. To shift the tax burden, we were at $8,300 taxation a few years ago, and now we're at $15,900 in 2025. And as a real climate, because of the hauling costs. Local government, regional districts don't have the authority to say now we're going to add another 5 or 10 or some, even if it's half the service level, half of that 17,000 to this service arbitrarily. Because we are capped. We raise only a certain amount once we cap every 5 years, we can rise more than 25%.
Yeah.
So there's some real difficulties here with just saying this is something the community values. We have to shift the burden. This is what we have to shift at whatever adjusted service level makes sense. And as we do that shift, do we have the authority to impose those taxes? Because every service is silent. So we have huge capacity to do this and that under Service S186. It's a $1.68 million budget. Not all taxation, we have big revenues in these streams. We don't have the ability in small services, just like the drainage. So this is why I asked that this become a conversation here. Under the surface, what are our options? What is the not perceived or possible cost per individual? Is there any way to get a handle on the real impact? Because people adjust their habits. And from there, we'll go back to joint resource, and this will be on the agenda. I chair that every third month in rotation. I chaired last, so I won't chair this coming. Then what do I do? Do I say we want another couple months, or we want 2 more years? It'd be disingenuous for me to say, well, let's have a couple more years, because this was a conversation 2 years ago when we let it slide. We did talk about the refuse, but we talked about the curbside. And if we had curbside, then we try and get in the dual stream, because they have a dual stream truck that would come up here. So one little truck comes up here right now and hauls a 20 low volume, most awkward bin you could transport with a drive and rig. And a truck that doesn't get the efficiency where it's versus the big truck hauling a large bin, or better yet, Rock Bay, we're compacting some of these. We're getting way more value per trip. In terms of diesel and driver costs and wear and tear on mileage. So you look at all those efficiencies and you think, okay, what can we do that would help the community both fronts? So the split truck that's been invested in by the same company that hauls these bins would come up, pick up curbside garbage. We're already doing it to 20 bins. And they can pick up recycle. We didn't get very far down that path. I don't know if that was a couple years ago or further.
Last year.
Was it just one?
No, it's a couple of years.
Donna was going to look into it last year and didn't. curbside.
Well,
We
again,
had
you
this
need,
whole conversation.
yeah, you need community commitment.
Oh, totally, and I
So,
absolutely get.
so if we're gonna make a change, just to say, well, let's keep this open at whatever cost the way it is, how do you fund it if the partners say no? You can't fund it by arbitrarily saying, well, we're increasing your taxes into this service. That's not an option. It's not legal.
Yeah, and that's not the
So
suggestion.
where do we take the conversations? What I'm grasping for here, and what do I say to my partners in East Resource Recovery? And I think they understand because I repeated the argument, working with 3 new partners over these years, every time there's election, basis change, right? And I've used this now. You're paying nominally 1.7 times per capita of the burden of this resource recovery management of what, say, others are paying in Lister or Erickson or wherever. We're paying more because of our total tax base, not this tax base, but our total tax base under 8. And that's how the costs are apportioned. So I can make that argument and then what? Say that we want this to go away for 2 years. Or do we say we're going to have another serious community conversation? And how do we get that conversation kicked off? What else can we do?
I hate to suggest this as an option, but you have garbage and recycling collection twice a week. What would happen? We have once a week.
Well,
But we would fight it like hell, but yeah.
Well, why would you fight it? You don't understand that if you're separating reasonably your organics,
Yeah.
then you can hold your dry garbage for a long time. Let's be here. In municipalities now where they've gone to annex collection, you only get garbage collection every 2 weeks because it's dry garbage. It's no more noxious than your recycling. And that's the norm. Go to Kamloops or Kelowna, you don't. So they use this split. The one picks up recycling and waste, and the other week picks up organics. And because the recycling is what you want to optimize and get out of the system, get a payback. The garbage is what you don't want. The residual is what you don't want. So people don't have 2 opportunities. We can pretty quick in Boswell, I'll find out people like me or hate me, because their opportunity is going to drop to once a week. And don't think there's not a big population in Boswell. It's not enough. We're being told.
Really spread out.
Yeah, but if how many miles do they have? Kilometers they have to drive. On the same analogy, right?
Yeah, which I realize none of this is unique, other than the fact that we have the station here currently already.
Well, if we could,
That it's not unique to us to the way it works, and just suggesting some other ideas that perhaps that study
Well,
hasn't explored.
if we can keep it and do it, just cut it in 1 day a week, is that a reasonable thing, or are you considering just the idea of like not at all?
well, these are options to go back to the funding partners. So to say that is not 1 day a week, and then there will be some impacts on the waste side. So, waste. Yeah. You want to keep waste twice a week, and what would be needed to be twice a week.
See, the reality is I do Crawford Bay once a week. On Sundays, I go to Kristen Nagel's and take hers. And no problem. No problem. And if I suggest you go with 1 day a week here, if people want to keep. It's not a big deal. Really. And I remember when people were getting all upset about no curbside stuff. Come on. This is small potatoes there. So that would allow any problem that you have in the summer to be covered.
And there are a number of people who, like Krista, you can't go.
Yeah.
Can't do it themselves. So going to Crawford Bay would be really short.
Well,
Yeah.
I find it great because I go visit people, meet people, it's not, and I go that direction to do something else. I would drop in the store or, go do something else. So, I think it's not you, no, your problem.
Lately, for some reason, it seems like that. Last year it didn't. seemed like it was used much more than others this year.
Yeah, I don't know. Still seems to.
Yeah.
A fair volume.
I just have one question, because I know you said that the personnel is different when it's recycling and when it's the waste. But if we have to have someone there on the day to collect waste and they happen to be there during recycling, I don't really see the savings in staffing costs if they're doing recycling, they're overseeing the recycling and the waste, or not.
It's who is paying for that.
It's
a different group of people paying for that.
Okay, because last year when we had this conversation, we ended up saying, okay, we'll charge more for per bag for the waste. That's how we ended the
Which helps
conversation.
offset this small service.
We have to do that because the overall cost.
Yeah, I understood why it had to be
No
done.
calling costs. But you're not paying for the staff person through this kind of budget. That's one of the none. It doesn't pay for the recycle staff person to stand there. In addition to multi-material BC, is if you're gonna take in recyclable material, you're gonna monitor so that you don't get into this rejected load cycle, which is much more expensive. You know, a few tens of thousands of dollars won't go very far when you start tipping and rejecting entire loads.
So where's that guy sitting there doing? Is he there? Is he there specifically to make sure we got tags on our garbage, or is he there for the recycling?
Second,
Okay,
because
so
we currently don't have a ban on what goes into the refuse the garbage.
yeah,
So that doesn't have to be monitored. Province at any time can say, dude, they haven't. They can, because I've heard movie stuff out of Ottawa about things they want us to do well, how much plastic's going in there? Audits on plastic. We'll get into detail, but it's absurd. But the recycling person must be there during the hours it's open.
Yeah.
Now, this is a challenge for the individual because we're supposed to say, hey, what are you doing today? Which cut? Can I help you out? You start this and this and make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, they do it to the extent that makes sense. If you start trying to get in, oh, let me see, what's happening? That's the job has to be manageable. But they're required to be there under the recycle regulation
okay.
because of those rules in the contract we signed with multi-material BC. They're not required to be there for waste. So because they're required, they're paid for by people who live in Yap and West Creston and you name it. They're paid for by all those.
But it is that suggestion of 1 day a week? Is that
That's just a suggestion, because we used to be 1 day a week when we had it.
is that might be a workable suggestion?
Yes.
Again, for me to go back with.
It's an opportunity to reduce some costs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without trying to rationalize all the other, maybe people have changed their patterns and maybe
Yeah.
I was there, he goes through the bins, the recycling bins, make sure it's the right stuff, the right bins.
Yeah.
so it's to avoid the rejecting, which cost us.
So like Nils, 1 day a week, does that sound
That
reasonable?
sounds reasonable to me, yeah.
Yeah, sounds fine to me, you know.
It certainly sounds like a compromise.
Yeah, a compromise.
Or yes.
Rather than not have it at all, 1 day.
And perhaps the community doesn't value it, and I don't really know how that's easily determined. I really don't.
Well,
I suspect,
I'll know from email and phone calls, so I'll know.
well, yeah, you'll still hear from the local.
And this all these might say they want KPI, key performance indicators. So now we go back to what you're suggesting. Things that you do across all the sites in the whole regional district are maybe not realistic.
Yeah.
But we could put a little lens and focus on now if for 1 day a week, who's coming, how frequent.
Yeah, what's the point?
And there's no way that anybody here goes twice a week. It needs to go twice a week.
So,
When you're saying once a week, then are you talking about both recycling and the refuse, or are you talking about just reducing it to 1 day a week for the recycling and the refuse goes twice a week? I just wanna
So they can be,
crystallize what the suggestion.
they can be independently because you have a local service area paying reference that is not being paid for by West Creston or by Windle. Your refuse hours and the hauling and all that is paid for by defined area, which is the
But someone still has to unlock it. What? you know.
Yeah, it would mean that our maintenance person then would have to handle,
If it were.
yeah, the tip of it.
So,
Mhm.
and is Lauren the guy that opened? Has been. So if it was one day with both things, that would, again.
Well, if it's one with both, that would avoid a problem, because say you open the garbage twice and the recycle once, and Buddy goes there and says, oh, I can't do my recycle.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not paying for that.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, you, yeah. So when you mismatch those, you do introduce mischief as a
Yeah,
potential.
that's true, but sometime I just think most of the time during the winter time, that wouldn't be a problem, but I wonder in the summertime if it would, when we have
So-
way more than twice.
So in the summer, you can go, not anymore, you used to be able to go to Boswell 2 days a week and Crop Bay 3 days a week, and here 2 days a week. So 7 days a week within the normal realm of travel. So you might say, well, I gotta go get something. Great Creek doesn't have, and I'm gonna go to home building in Creston, and you got more, all kinds of opportunity on the way down the road. On Sunday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Without this, that's reality. If there are other opportunities, say, oh, I'm just gonna wait.
I think we probably have a consensus here that one day a week is better than shutting it down.
Yes, for sure.
You know, so if that is an argument that,
And
There is
it's
some way.
not even a hurtful thing,
no, I know, I didn't.
you know, not even close.
But you want me to tell the staff that you contemplate both going to one day a week?
Yeah.
So that there's no mischief.
And it's easier for people to keep track, they don't get
That's right.
confused, which
That's
day
right.
is which.
That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I go every Sunday, boom, it's like clockwork. It's easy. No,
Okay, we're late. I apologize, it's a long meeting. But I think some pretty serious issues that we're spending some time on. So Gary, is that good?
And there's nothing else needs to be talked about between now.
Okay.
You're all happy.
No, I'm not. Because so many little budgetary shifts
Oh.
this year. We talked about there's a new tag on your S109, your community center on asset management fees.
Yeah, I noticed that actually.
So we're creating what is it, almost 300,000 this year in this allocation service.
Yeah, let's deal with that. We'll look at that budget.
Yeah, so is that a fair amount of burden to put on this service this year based on what's gonna get done this year? And I'm asking that about the complex, the library service, about many,
We'll see what this.
more impacts budget. We get to talk about some of that first. Yeah.
All right, we have no public? I don't know, do we? Is there still, there's still somebody hanging in there, holy cow. There's a dedicated person. So I should ask, whoever is out there as the public observer, is there any observation or comment you wanted to make? Next point, or question? No? Not hearing anything? All right. So, next meeting is March 3rd. And motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. Thanks, people. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you.
When we're talking about the drainage,
Thank you, Alana.
a big chunk of.
Good. Made some sense in there.
And we'll see.
Okay. Take care.
I will be in Vancouver for March and April, but I will attend online. I will